Were the pyramids of Giza built from natural stone or cast from a concrete-like material by a civilization whose capabilities we have barely begun to understand? This debate has smoldered for over 40 years, and you would think that with today's technology, the answer would be straightforward. It isn't, and the reason it isn't is more disturbing than the question itself. Hi guys, today I'll discuss a real forbidden archaeology topic, the pyramid stone. In 1982, material scientist and Professor Joseph Davidovits stood before the Third International Congress of Egyptologists and presented something that made the room deeply uncomfortable. His report proposed that pyramid blocks were not quarried and hauled at all, they were cast, poured from a limestone-based geopolymer concrete, directly at a construction site. The Egyptological establishment did not engage with the science. They dismissed it. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's most powerful and internationally recognized archaeological authority for decades, called the concrete theory highly stupid and idiotic. He did not offer a detailed material rebuttal. He simply declared the matter closed. And then, 1 year after Davidovits presented his paper, the Egyptian government introduced a legal ban prohibiting anyone from acquiring even a speck of dust from the pyramid stones for testing purposes. 1 year. Think about that. If the pyramid blocks are definitively natural stone, as the authorities insist, the fastest and most convincing way to prove it would be to invite material scientists in, let them run their tests, and publish the results. Case closed. Legacy protected. Debate ended. Instead, they banned the tests entirely. Well, there are exceptions. They did allow their own researchers to collect hundreds of mortar samples at multiple pyramids for carbon dating. Why is it okay to remove mortars from pyramids for testing, but not block fragments? What are they trying to hide? Why is it so taboo to question the pyramid stone might not be natural, but man-made concrete? After forbidding scientists from testing whether the pyramid blocks are natural or artificial, the debate quieted down, but it never went away. Once in a while, certain daring researchers presented their data to the academia, arguing the synthetic nature of pyramid blocks. But it's a challenging endeavor. As MIT professor Lynn Hobbs, a materials and nuclear sciences specialist, observed, the very idea has been so controversial that you can't get research funding, and it's difficult to get a paper through peer review. It seems some powerful people tried very hard to suppress the concrete theory. In 2013, to the enormous relief of mainstream Egyptology, a remarkable artifact was discovered. The Diary of Mera, the oldest surviving written papyrus ever found, dating to the reign of Pharaoh Khufu approximately 4,500 years ago. Dubbed the greatest discovery in Egypt in the 21st century, is the work log of a man named Mera documenting the daily transportation of stone from the Tura quarry to Giza. You have probably heard people say they literally found an ancient document proving the pyramids were built from natural quarried stone. That claim is false, and the misrepresentation is worth examining carefully. The Diary of Mera, Papyrus Jeff A and B, records limestone being quarried and shipped from Tura to Giza. What it does not record, not once in any entry, is those stones being used to build a pyramid. The only construction work explicitly documented in the diary is work on a dike near the pool of Khufu, a structure located outside the Giza Plateau. The Giza Plateau is a massive site. Beyond the three main pyramids, it contains hundreds of stone structures, causeways, temples, tombs, and administrative buildings. The Tura limestone recorded in Mara's diary could have been destined for any of them. The diary proves that the limestone was quarried and transported. It proves nothing about the pyramid construction methodology. The pyramid mystery remains entirely intact. Anyone telling you otherwise has not read the source. The most common objection to the concrete hypothesis goes like this. The pyramid blocks contain visible fossil shells, Neolithic limestone packed with the remains of ancient marine organisms. Natural stone contains fossils. Therefore, the blocks are natural stone. It sounds logical, but it has a critical flaw. The Giza Plateau sits atop one of the most highly fossiliferous limestone formations in the world. If ancient builders used the same local limestone as the aggregate material in a concrete mix, which is precisely what Davidovits proposed, the resulting cast blocks would contain exactly the same fossils as naturally quarried stone. The presence of fossils does not distinguish between the two possibilities at all. More tellingly, Davidovits reported something that natural sedimentation cannot explain. In naturally formed limestone, fossil shells settle in orderly horizontal layers over geological time. That's how sedimentary rock forms. But in the pyramid blocks, Davidovits found the shells in complete disarray, jumbled and haphazardly oriented, as though the material had been mixed and poured rather than slowly deposited. The Geopolymer Institute later demonstrated this directly, casting replica limestone blocks from the same local aggregate, complete with randomly oriented, embedded fossils that are visually indistinguishable from those in the pyramid stones. The fossil argument, far from disproving the concrete hypothesis, may actually support it. Here is what the Egyptological establishment would prefer you did not spend too much time reading. The published material science literature on pyramid stone composition is far more contested and far more interesting than the official narrative suggests. Let us walk through it. 1984, Davidovits, France. Using X-ray fluorescence and X-ray diffraction, Davidovits found that the blocks consisted primarily of limestone aggregate, 85 to 92%, bound together with an alkali aluminosilicate material consistent with a geopolymer binder, which is distinct from the quarry stone. He also identified air bubbles, organic fibers, animal bones, and teeth within the stone matrix. These are materials that do not occur in naturally formed limestone. Their presence requires an explanation that natural stone theory cannot provide. 1990, Folk and Campbell, USA. Two American researchers visited Giza, examined the stone near the northeast corner of the Great Pyramid, and declared within minutes that the blocks were clearly natural limestone. Their paper is still cited today by those who wish to discredit Davidovits. What those citations repeatedly omit is the letter Folk himself wrote to Davidovits in 1992, privately conceding that the stone he had examined was the pyramid's natural bedrock core, a geological layer that Egyptologist Mark Lanner had documented as early as 1983. Folk and Campbell had not examined the pyramid blocks. They had examined the bedrock the pyramid sits on. Folk acknowledged the error in writing. The paper, however, remained in circulation, and its retraction was never widely publicized. 2004, Demortier, Belgium. Professor Guy Demortier of Belgium applied PIXE, PIGE, and NMR analysis to pyramid samples. His conclusion was unambiguous. The masonry showed multiple lines of evidence consistent with the molding procedure, using ingredients all locally available in the Cairo region. He stated directly that the data argued against the conventional Egyptological position of hewn blocks. 2006, Barsoon, Guthrie and Ganguly, USA. This is perhaps the most significant study of the modern era. Professor Michel Barsoon of Drexel University and two colleagues applied scanning and transmission electron microscopy to pyramid limestone samples, comparing them against 6 natural limestone samples from the surrounding area. What they found in the pyramid samples had no equivalent in any of the natural limestone controls. Microconstituents containing silicon in combination with calcium and magnesium in ratios that do not exist in any known natural limestone source in the region. Hydrated calcite and dolomite, minerals that do not hydrate in nature. And most strikingly, submicron silica-based spheres, nanoscale structures, whose presence strongly implies that the material had at some point been in a basic solution in line with the casting or precipitation process, not geological formation. Their conclusion, quote, "The sophistication and the endurance of this ancient concrete technology is simply astounding," end quote. 2007, Jena, USA. A counter-study by material scientist Deepayan Jena concluded that the casing stones were natural limestone, identical to Tura quarry material. Jena's paper has been widely cited as a definitive rebuttal to Barsoom's findings. There is a major problem with it. Jena's study relied partly on what he called the Lauer sample, a historically important pyramid sample with a well-documented appearance and known dimensions. The authentic Lauer sample measures 15 millimeters in thickness. The sample Jena received and tested measured 25 millimeters. It also lacked the signature surface coating that characterized the authentic sample and is mentioned regularly in scientific literature. Jena himself noted the discrepancies 3 times within his own paper. He continued the analysis anyway, declared the sample natural limestone, and published. The paper has been cited as authoritative ever since. 2008, Lyrices, Greece. A Greek research team published XRD and XRF analysis, concluding the blocks were natural stone. However, their paper contained no raw XRD figures, no peak plots, no actual diffraction patterns, and no detailed data tables, the foundational outputs that any XRD analysis depend on for independent verification. Without those, the conclusion cannot be checked, validated, challenged, or replicated. In material science, a study that presents a conclusion without its supporting spectral data is not a study that can be trusted. 2011, researchers from New Zealand, UK, and USA. Multinuclear NMR analysis of casing stones from the Bent Pyramid at Dasha found that the stones consist of Tura quarry limestone grains cemented with an amorphous calcium silicate gel, a material formed by human intervention through the addition of silica, possibly from diatomaceous earth sourced in a nearby Fayum region. Conclusion: the casing stones of the Bent Pyramid are synthetic blocks. 2012, Tani and Al-Himali, Slovakia, Egypt. Using paleomagnetic investigation, this team reasoned that if pyramid blocks were cast in place, their magnetic moments would align uniformly in a north-south orientation. If they were quarried, transported, and randomly rotated during placement, their magnetic orientations would be scattered. Of 6 sampling locations across the Khufu and Khafre pyramids, 3 show the same north-south alignment consistent with in-place casting. 2 showed orientations consistent with transported stone. The picture is mixed, but the data for casting in situ is present, and it cannot easily be dismissed. 2021, De Mortier, Belgium. In a follow-up study, Professor De Mortier identified carbon microclusters ranging from 5 to 15 micrometers in pyramid block samples, clusters of apparent organic origin occurring alongside sodium-rich clusters in the same locations. This chemical signature is completely absent in limestone samples from Egyptian quarries. The elemental distribution of carbon, oxygen, sodium, sulfur, chlorine, and calcium in the pyramid samples is structurally and compositionally different from quarry limestone in ways that is consistent with a processed, manufactured material. Step back from the individual studies for a moment and look at the institutional pattern. Material scientists attempting to study pyramid stone cannot get research funding. Peer review rejects their papers before the data is even evaluated. The Egyptian authority banned physical sampling in 1983, 1 year after Davidovits went public, and tightened that ban in 2010 to criminalize the removal of even mud repellent samples. 2 German researchers who took unauthorized fragments in 2013 were convicted in absentia and sentenced to 5 years in Egyptian prison. Egypt has actively pursued the return of pyramid samples held in foreign institutions, including a casing stone in the National Museum of Scotland. MIT professor Lynn Hobbs stated, "Too many big egos and too many published work may be riding on the idea that every pyramid block was carved, not cast." Material scientist Michel Bersoun received so much hostility after publishing his paper on the synthetic nature of the pyramid stone. He said that you would have thought I claimed pyramids were carved by lasers. The Egyptian authorities now argue that all future testing should be conducted within Egypt, under Egyptian institutional oversight, rather than allowing samples to leave the country. In other words, any future results would be under direct control of the same authority that has spent 4 decades insisting the answer is already settled. This is not how science works. This is how a conclusion gets protected from the evidence. Consider the asymmetry. Researchers have been permitted to collect hundreds of mortar samples from multiple pyramids for carbon dating purposes. Mortar removal is acceptable. Block fragment removal is a criminal offense. Why is the mortar less sacred than the stone? Unless, of course, the mortar does not threaten the established narrative, and the stone does. By the way, I made a video delving into the hidden, surprising truth on the pyramid carbon dating results. The link is below in the description section. Check it out. The data reveals much more than what the authorities want to admit. To understand the resistance towards the concrete theory, you have to know what is at stake. And it's not just academic pride. Mainstream Egyptology has spent over a century building its entire professional legacy on a specific story: copper tool workers, limestone quarries, sledges, ramps, and the organizational genius of pharaonic Egypt. Museums, careers, national identity, a country's proud heritage, and one of the world's most lucrative tourism industries are all anchored to that story. The Great Pyramid, as a monument of human labor under divine kingship, is a far more culturally powerful and commercially valuable narrative than the Great Pyramid as a prehistoric industrial concrete structure built by a civilization we cannot yet identify or explain, and may not even be of Egyptian origin. As Havas himself once put it, the pyramids represent the crown jewel of Egyptian civilization. That crown does not sit as comfortably on a concrete plant as it does on a royal tomb. The problem, obviously, is that truth does not adjust itself to the requirements of a good story. The verdict: No single study is conclusive. That is the honest answer. But when you look at the full body of a material science evidence, Davidovits disarray fossils, air bubbles, and anomalous binders, Barsoom's nanoscale silica spheres, Demodier's carbon clusters, the NMR evidence from the Band Pyramid, the paleomagnetic data, a pattern emerges that the natural stone theory struggles to account for. The studies supporting natural stone have their own problems. A geologist who examined a bedrock and called it a pyramid block, a key sample that mysteriously grew 10 millimeters between laboratories, an XRD paper without XRD data. What the evidence demands is not a verdict, not yet. What it demands is more testing conducted transparently by independent material scientists with verified samples and published raw data. That's all the concrete hypothesis has ever asked for. The Egyptian authorities have spent 40 years refusing that request, and the longer that refusal continues, the more the deafening silence itself becomes the most interesting data point of all. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please subscribe and share with others. You can also support me on Patreon or on Buy Me a Coffee. I appreciate your support. This is Curious Being. I'm Tina. Thanks for watching and see you next time.